So much fun in the start to the new season for this Duke men's basketball team. A 7-3 record, really impressive offensive numbers that we're going to be able to highlight throughout today's show. I think you're going to have a whole lot of fun. And oh yeah, by the way, my good friend, Ryan Lommen, your good friend at the Duke Nation on Twitter, stops by to be on the program here with us today.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us on this Friday, December 15th, 2023. Excited to be talking about everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop for all of those conversations, from Duke men's basketball to Duke football. Tomorrow on the program, Chris Edwards will be here with us to talk about the start for this Duke women's basketball season. We talk about it all here on the program. And man, we've got a fun show here for you today, as my good pal Ryan Lommen at the Duke Nation on Twitter will be stopping by to chat with us here on the show about the first couple of games this season for the Duke Blue Devils. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. You can find me as there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. Follow and subscribe to our podcast for free wherever you get your podcast, out 5 days a week, going on 3 years of doing this thing, and super excited to keep growing the show with you and your support. Now on YouTube, of course, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as we get closer to 2,000 subscribers over there. So thank you always for your support here on Locked On Blue Devils. Without further ado, let me bring on my good pal, Ryan Lommen, who joins us once again on the show here today. It's been a little while since I've had you on the show, Ryan. That's a good thing. We've got more basketball to have watched. But man, I've missed you. It's good to have you back on the show here.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me. It's been an up and down start to the season, one that I'm not sure a lot of us expected, but it seems like maybe the last two games are righting the ship a little bit. So hopefully they can continue that going forward here with a big game against Baylor next week, and super excited to see how they perform against a high-level opponent like that.
That's just the season as we know it, right? There's going to be a lot of highs, a lot of lows throughout the course of the season, and we've seen a couple of those already to this point for this team. To your point, I think there have been a couple of kind of bump in the roads earlier than some might would have envisioned for the Duke team, with back-to-back road losses already against Arkansas and against Georgia Tech. But boy, they've bounced back quickly. What do you think about the fact that we have seen a couple of kind of roadblocks, but then Duke being able to turn the corner and respond quickly?
Yeah, I think it's a testament to Shire and this staff. I mean, I've been one of them that's been a little hard on them coming in after the expectations they had in the start they had. I think the offense just looked stagnant. The effort and the intensity level wasn't there. But after a week of practice and a couple of games after the 2-game losing streak, I think you can see what they're trying to do out there. And when the players actually respect that game plan and take it out there on the court, it does a lot of really good things. And I think we saw that in the second half and against Hofstra. But I also think you saw flashes of it in the first half, even though the game wasn't going well. Hofstra is a very good 3-point shooting team. They're going to hit the shot, which they did. Second half, it didn't fall as often as they would have liked, which helped Duke in a lot of senses. But they're moving away from the ball. The offense looks a lot better. They're setting pin downs. They're running actions for McCain, Jeremy Roach as well. Like, Roach is obviously playing really, really good basketball these last 4 games. So just a testament to the coaching staff, getting these guys' heads right, not letting them get too down and not letting them get too high, hopefully at some point this season, and just keeping them level-headed is going to be a key for them.
A lot of talk about the offense coming up throughout our conversation here today. We'll have a look at some numbers a little bit later in the show if you're watching us on YouTube, and we'll do our best to vocalize those who may be listening to us in a podcast form. But with that being said, I'm glad you mentioned Jon Scheyer. In my world, and you certainly are the guy when it comes to the Duke basketball talking space out there on a platform like Twitter, it feels as though there's been a little bit of discourse amongst the fans through these first 10 games of the season about Jon Scheyer the in-game coach, which is always so fascinating to me that we're quickly forming these opinions on a dude that's only had the job for over one season, 10 games into the second year. And in a lot of ways, I just don't know how people walk away with the opinions that they do, those more so being in the negative light with what we've seen so far. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the week with Connor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated. Even in Duke's wins this season, there are very clear adjustments that are taking place at halftime and in the locker room throughout the course of these games. I don't know how people are walking away with these opinions that Jon Scheyer's just not seeing some things throughout the course of a game.
Yeah, for me, I think my biggest gripe was the stagnant offense, especially coming into the season when we have the high power guys that we're bringing back. You have Proctor, who is expected to make a lottery pick leap. You have Flip, who's expected to make a little bit of a leap. It's tough to do after last season, but another leap to stay in that lottery conversation. And then Roach, obviously a fourth-year player coming back who has played well now recently. And then Mark Mitchell last year, who did probably shoot well, and we're seeing he shot much better from three than probably should have. He kind of came back down to life this year with that shot that he's got. That's about as high as a line drive in baseball. So, but the offensive firepower was there. You come back, then you bring in guys like Caleb Foster, Jared McCain, TJ Power, a little bit of Sean Stewart, and then just I think one thing I struggled with last season was the lack of roles and lack of identity, and that didn't come around until later in the season when Duke started turning it on. The rotation was set. Once Lively got healthy, you could see this team, everybody really settling into their roles. And I think that was the hard part for me coming into this season was I want to see roles defined. It's going to take a few games to get rotations going, but I want guys to know when they're going to be playing in these bigger games. And it just didn't seem like right away that these freshmen and even the older guys knew exactly what their roles when they were out there, especially guys like Mitchell. And then you bring in a guy like Ryan Young every now and then, which I'm not against Ryan Young by any means. He has his place in the court. But then, like I said, going back to the offensive sets, it just seemed like we'd come down the court. We'd have a ball screen be set at the top. And then after that, no one else is moving. It's a dribble drive, kick it out. And so I want to praise John for these last two games. There's been more pin down, more action away from the ball handler, which I was calling. I'm not saying I was right. And I know John talked about, and the guys talked about what they're doing in practice isn't showing up in games. And so that may not be on John at all. This is just a fan take. And so maybe now the guys are just doing what they're told in practice and it's translating to the game. But in these last few games, it's just been nice to see. And I think, I forget his name who tweeted it, and I quote tweeted it as well, about them Duke running more of a Denver Nugget style offense with Flip.
Brian Geisinger from ACC Sports. Yes. Thank
you. Yeah. Flip running more of that Jokic style. And sure, Flip shot really, really poorly from 3-pointer to start the season. This offense doesn't work unless Flip can stretch the floor, and running that pro style offense is the same. So once he starts hitting these threes, like he has the last two games, that offense becomes more potent. You can do a lot more with him at the high spot on the top of the key. And so there's a lot of factors that go into this. There was a lot of, I think, expectations coming into this season with guys returning, and it just didn't come to fruition right away, which is where I jumped the gun on criticizing Scheyer. I think some of it was warranted. I do, but I also think if the guys are saying what we're doing in practice isn't translating to games, that's a little bit on the coach, but a lot of on the players and the leaders in that locker room. So I'm glad, hopefully, they're turning a corner now.
And my point more so being like, hey, obviously these conversations in the locker room are doing something. You've got some competitive games in the first half, and then the second half, things really ramp up. We saw some different shooting split numbers in games to start the year, even in wins this season. Duke has not shot the ball as well in the first half. They get more open, clean looks in the second half. Those numbers go up. As Connor O'Neill again pointed out earlier in the week on this show, looking at the Hofstra game in particular, Hofstra, one of the best shooting teams in the entire country. They only turned the basketball over 4 times in the first half. Duke made some adjustments on the defensive end of the floor. They turned it over 10 times in the second half, turning into a more dominant performance there on the defensive end. So I don't like the disclaimer out there. And maybe I'm in a dark corner of the internet, not seeing what everyone else is saying. But let's give the kind of in-game adjustments a break for a little bit, because I do think we're seeing more of those than people are giving this Duke team credit for. For sure. Yeah. And I think that is a highlight for him is the second half adjustments. I think I still would I think a lot of people are clamoring for more Sean Stewart. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know. There's
There's times where obviously he looks a little rattled out there, but that's a freshman coming in playing in a high level environment. Defensively, this team's been really good, I think, in my opinion. I think the most we've let up is 80 points this year, and that was to Arkansas after the game kind of got out of hand at the end. But otherwise, we're holding teams into the 60s and 70s every night. Defense probably not as solid as it was last year with Lively holding down the post, but I will say the defensive side hasn't really missed a beat last season, which is great. And we did bring in some length on the perimeter with Foster, and I think Proctor. And Proctor being out now, I'm even more impressed by the way the freshmen and Roach have stepped up to fill that void. So defensively, props to the staff and Shire. They've done a great job there.
We need to take a break. We'll look at some of the stats and numbers on the offensive end of the floor for Duke after this timeout here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, here we go today. It's Locked On Blue Devils, and our show is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Gametime is one of my absolute favorite apps that I've got on my phone, and you need to get it as well because you shouldn't have to worry about getting tickets to your favorite sporting event or just next big event in general. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Last-minute ticket deals, flash deals, they've got it all, as they're the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. All right, we'll move forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Ryan Lommen at the Duke Nation on Twitter. Tell me a little bit about your work, man. You've got an awesome show that you're doing after some of these games, a great follow on Twitter. People have no idea who you are. Tell us about the Duke Nation and what all you got going on, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Signed on with the Field of 68 this season to host our show Crazie Cast. I do that alongside Zion and Russ at Duke Better and at Duke NBA. We go live about once a week, always after the big games, and then after once a week in ACC play. So we get about 16 to 20 to 23 shows in a season, just depending on how long the season goes for. So check us out there. It's been fun. It's been a good time. And then obviously over on Twitter or X at the Duke Nation, and then on Instagram as well. Run an Instagram account with a buddy of mine, Will, that's at the Duke Nation on Instagram as well. So you really can catch us anywhere. I have a TikTok, haven't posted in a while. I'm a dad, I'm a husband. I'm a little too busy to juggle all this stuff. I got a bunch of social media accounts. So one of them has to take a back seat, but yeah, man, it's fun. It's the show's a good time and everyone is super interactive and I appreciate all the support that people have given us.
And you're always on top of things when it comes to Duke basketball and what's going on there, not only with this team, but the recruiting world. There's VJ Edge come out there, potentially still looming for this Duke team, and you're going to be on top of all of it. Go check out the work there at the Duke Nation on your social media platforms. All right, so we teased it a moment ago. I do want to take a look at some of these numbers that we've seen so far to start the year for this Duke basketball team. So if you're watching with us on YouTube, you now see these season stats. As you look at some of these individual numbers, we've talked about the shooting as of late for this Duke basketball team. What jumps out to you in that regard?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is that Roach 3-point percentage at 50% for the season. I think they're putting him, at least recently, in some really good spots to knock down shots. He's getting really, really comfortable, which has been awesome to see. The other one, it sticks out like a sore thumb, is Mark Mitchell shooting 5.9% from three. I think I saw the stat. He's like 1 of 17 from three this season. Just tough, man. And not that he doesn't have the shot, because last year, obviously he shot, I think, over 40% from three. So those two numbers stand out a lot. Flip's doing his thing. He had a couple down games. I think that average could be up around 20, 22 if he continues to progress the way he was. He said he wasn't really right mentally these last couple of weeks. So I think if he comes back and his confidence continues to climb, that number will jump. The other thing, I know he hasn't played in the last two games, but Tyrese Proctor with the 10.3 points per game, I was really hoping that would be up there even before the injury, up there around like that 14-15 range. But his assist to turnover ratio is fantastic, or has been in a lot of games this season. So it's just really good to see him continue to take that leap, at least with the ball handling and the turnover wise. So that's great. The other thing I want to call out real quick is the numbers aren't going to show this, but Jalen Blake's in these last couple of games just coming in some really good minutes, hitting some decent shots and making some plays offensively as well. So some progression there. I'm not saying he's going to get a lot of minutes in ACC play, but it's been really cool to see him come around this time of year again.
Yeah, so some of those numbers, again, the shooting splits for Duke from three-point range, really important to point out here. Both Filipowski and Proctor, 32.4%. Both of those guys, 11 for 34 in total attempts on the season. Jeremy Roach isn't even 50% at 17 of 34. TJ Power, 50% as well, 6 of 12 on attempts this season. You mentioned Jalen Blake's. He's at 40%, 4 of 10 on the year, although he just had that 3-for-3 game against Charlotte. So there's a reason for a little bit of the inflation there with the three-point numbers. Hopefully he can keep that going. 38.5% for Caleb Foster. Mark Mitchell, really, really tough start to the year. 1 for 17. To your point, 6% shooting from three. And then my guy, Jared McCain, let's make sure we give him some love because he's been the outside shooter when Duke needs it most. 44.2%. He's attempted the most with 43 three-point shots. 19 of them have gone in. I'm really pleased with what we've seen over the last few games from Jared McCain in particular.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a testament going back to just the offense we're running too. I think a lot of he did shoot. He was taking a lot of 2-point mid-range shots, I think, to start the season, and that was just coming off of broken plays or drives, and he'd pump fake and go around. And so now that he's getting more actions run for him, I think it's just been cool to see him continue to knock down the 3-point shot. It's something Duke needs, especially with the fact that TJ Power is only getting sub 10 minutes a game. You're looking for guys who can knock down shots. Jared McCain was coming in as one of the best shooters in his class, if not of all of high school. So great to see him doing what he's doing. And he just seems to be playing with a little bit more of a confidence these last few games. It takes some of these guys. I don't care where you played and how big of a level you played on. It's a little bit different coming in here when you're playing guys that are 4 years older than you every single night, no matter what level of NCAA basketball they're at, whether it's Arizona or whether it's Hofstra. These guys are good basketball players, and it can be intimidating as well. So just getting comfortable is awesome and getting used to the offense as well there.
Well, let's see how they can continue to improve over the next few games to see how these averages may come down or some guys go up, right? Clearly, you would think, given what Mark Mitchell did a year ago as honestly one of the top percentage three-point shooters for Duke last year, you're going to level it out a little bit from this 1 of 17 start from the outside, and maybe some other guys start to fall down back to earth a little bit. The other thing that's been important to point out has been Duke's effort on the glass, and rebounding is something that Duke has done really well in games that they've won and not done a good job in games that they've lost, which kind of makes sense. You look at Duke's next game coming up against Baylor. They're one of the best offensive teams in the entire country, but they're also one of the top rebounding teams at nearly 40 rebounds per contest for the Baylor Bears. On the glass, what have you liked out of the Duke team this season?
Yeah, I think it's Flip just being more aggressive than he had to be last year because Lively was there to clean up everything. He's kind of filled that void on a rebounding point. I mean, obviously, we're not one of the better rebounding teams in the country, but the fact that Flip is a guy who can play stretch 5 is averaging almost 10 rebounds a game, to me is super impressive. Mark Mitchell kind of doing the same thing. We're just kind of stepping in and filling that void, being that bulldog that he kind of is and getting in there to grab some rebounds at just under 5 rebounds a game, I think is key. Ryan Young obviously runs some decent minutes for us, but not a great rebounder. But the one that sticks out here is Jared McCain as a guard, getting just over 4 rebounds a game. And the guy's
so impressive on the glass, man.
Yeah, he's just everywhere, man. And I do some betting and stuff, and to see his line throughout this year go up every game at over 2.5, over 3.5. Now it's almost over 4.5 every game. Where you got to be making bets on him that way is kind of crazy for a freshman at his size. So it's been fun, a lot of fun to watch. And just it seems like he's everywhere on the court on that end of the floor.
PrizePicks with Locked On Podcast Network. We've got those over-unders out there. So you're telling folks more than when it comes to the rebounds for Jared McCain more times than not because he's attacking the glass.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. He's just everywhere, and he's just sneaky too. So it's kind of like one of those. It's like, oh, geez, look, another one. He's right there. So, and he's good at judging balls off the basket, which is a sign of a good shooter and B, a good rebounder. So
that's what we love to hear. I love it. All right, well let's get ready. We'll take one final break on today's show, and then when we come back, we'll wrap up this conversation. Once again, my pal Ryan Lommen at the Duke Nation joining us here on the program today. All right, Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. We just talked about them, and PrizePicks, of course, is the largest daily fantasy sports platform out there. All right, we have the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, as it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. With basketball season now here, you could pick combo projections across football and basketball from a specials league, a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-point shots made and receptions. Pretty awesome. You might want to go and check that out. PrizePicks also offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Right now, go ahead and check out prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. We wind down today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Ryan Lommen at the Duke Nation on social media platforms. Baylor, the next game coming up for this Duke basketball team at Madison Square Garden. Baylor and then Queens, and then we jump back into ACC play for good as we turn the calendar to 2024. How important do you think it is that Duke finds a way to win this game on Wednesday?
I think it's huge, man. There's not confidence like going in to Madison Square Garden and beating I think they're a top 6 team right now. So this team needs it, man. It's not a do or die or a must win, but this team needs to win this game to get them set up properly for ACC play. I'm actually going to be heading down to Durham for that Syracuse game, and I don't want to go in there watching a team with a lack of confidence. So obviously Queen's not too worried about, but that's not a game that can get their confidence right going into ACC play. So this Baylor game is huge. It's going to be really tough. This is not going to be an easy game. It would be a very impressive win for this team. Baylor's always athletic. Like you said, they're one of the better rebounding teams in the country. And so these guys have to be making shots on their game, and defensively, going to have to keep tightening up with the way they have. And so very important. I hate saying must win in December or before ACC play, but this feels almost as close to a must win as you can get. They need to have it for the confidence going into the conference season.
Yeah, big game coming up, of course, with Duke and Baylor on Wednesday from Madison Square Garden. We love calling it Cameron North because we expect a big Duke crowd out there. Tomorrow, on Saturday this weekend, Baylor is going to play Michigan State, a team that Duke has already played. So Duke's going to have, you would say, fresher legs with 8 days in between games when this one is played, but there will be a common opponent on the schedule as Baylor takes on Michigan State over the weekend, and then they'll be able to play this Duke team. But as we talked about, that offense for Baylor can get after it. So Duke's only given up the most points, being 80 against Arkansas, as you pointed out earlier, Ryan. I think they're going to be tested on the defensive end against the Bears.
Yeah, another thing for this game is the strength of schedule that Duke's had. We haven't won any of, or besides Michigan State, I think they're our best win of the season, if I'm remembering correctly, and they're not even good anymore. They've lost.
They're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, exactly. We scheduled these games, and even Arkansas at the time wasn't really we weren't a top 25, 30 team in the country anymore. So these are the games you have to win, especially when the ACC is as down as it has been. It's getting better. It's better than it was last year, but still, it comes seeding time and tournament time. Everybody right now doesn't like to think about it, but you have to start thinking about it, because if you don't win this Baylor game, you don't have very many quality wins going into conference play, and you're only going to have a few of them to get in conference play. And so when it comes down to seeding in March, seeds do matter. People and coaches say, "Oh, it doesn't matter." No, it matters. Like, statistically speaking, the 1 seed has a much better chance of winning than 2. I mean, it goes that way when it comes to March Madness. So the difference between a 3 seed and a 2 seed is huge. And so these games, they do matter in December, as much as people don't want to talk about it, and they don't want to talk about March and seedings at this time of season. They're big for it, especially when the ACC is down. So you got to take advantage of these games.
Big time opportunity for Duke coming up again this upcoming Wednesday in Madison Square Garden, taking on Baylor. We'll be watching the game. We need to go out and check out Crazie Cast after these games take place. You guys do a remarkable job. One more time, Ryan, before you head out of here, promote all your work and tell folks a little bit about the show, how you guys are interacting with folks as the show is playing out and that sort of thing. Give us a promo.
Yeah, absolutely. Crazie Cast on Twitter, on YouTube. You can find us on the Field of 68 network with Jeff Goodman and Rob Dosser. Those guys have been great with us. But it's a live show, and you can comment along. We show comments on the screen, so it's kind of like a fan interaction show where you get your voice heard, we get our voices heard. It's a win-win for everybody. And then it's a podcast as well. So if you miss it, you can check it back out on Apple, Spotify, all the places you get your podcasts. And then I'm on Twitter or X at the Duke Nation. I feel like I've gotten it down where I have all the right notifications turned on for certain accounts. So if any news breaks, I have it right there. And you can ask my wife. My phone doesn't really leave my pocket very often, so it's always there and always on alert. So you're never going to miss any news if you're following me. And yeah, I appreciate you letting me shout that out.
No doubt. We're looking forward to having you back on the show here sometime soon. Ryan, thanks for the time. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll do this again soon, okay?
Thanks. Appreciate you, JJ.
All right, that's Ryan Lommen joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. That's going to do it for our show here today. Thank you always for your support of the program. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.